say the game is getting old. Monday morning and your coffee's cold. Life is not what you want it to be. You need another chance.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to A New Direction. Yes, it's a special show if you're tuning in with us right now. I have the Bretton Putter with me, and I'm going to tell you, Bretton Putter has written this great, amazing book on company culture. All right, we don't talk about it. We should be talking about it, but he's going to talk about it with us today. So I'm telling you right now, you need to call your boss. You need to call your managers. You need to listen. You need to call your friends, because we're going to talk about his book, Culture Decks Decoded, Transforming Your Culture into a Visible, Conscious, and Tangible Asset. And we're going to talk about company culture and the importance. If you're an entrepreneur, I am telling you right now, you need to listen to the show 100,000 times, because Bretton is going to enlighten you about your culture that you're developing as an entrepreneur. If you have been in business for 1,000 years, and congratulations for making it to 1,000, you're going to want to listen to the show, because you need to probably take another look at your company culture. If you do not have a company culture, or you don't think you do, I promise you do, you're going to want to look at it. So I'm telling you, get yourself ready to go, because we're going to do that. But we're going to do what we do every time we get together, and that is we're going to check in with the 4 areas of your life, because that's what we do here, right? So, right, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, we like to check in. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being miserable, 10 being outstanding, where are you at physically? Where are you at? Are you a 3, 4, or 5? Are you doing the right things? Are you eating right? Right? I know it's hard, right? We the holiday season, it can be a little difficult to eat right and say no to the pies and the cakes and the other desserts. I know that's a little harder. Saying no to that, maybe extra glass of wine, that can be a little tough to do too. But are you getting some exercise? Are you doing things that you should be doing? Are you getting to the gym? A lot of people like to get to the gym a little extra. So where are you on that scale? And remember, the whole point is, I'm not trying to get you from a 3 to a 10. I just want you to try to get from a 3 to a 4. So what do you got to do, wherever that number is for you? What do you have to do to get yourself one step better, right? Maybe it is just saying no to a few things that you just, let do at this time of year. All right, let's move on to the mental side. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being bad, 10 being great, where are you at mentally? And you say, well, what do you mean by mentally? Well, what are you filling your mind with? Right? There's 2 sides of our brain. We're left side and we're right side brain, right? So the right side of our brain is creative and the left side of our brain is more logical. And me as a psychological professional, I am so convinced that we got to work both sides of our brain. We need to be creative and we need to be logical. We need to work both sides of that. So what are you reading? What are you ingesting? You know me, I love reading books and I love being entertained, and I play some instruments on the side. So I'm trying to work both sides of my brain. Perhaps you're doing that. Maybe you're learning a new language. Maybe you're doing none of it, right? Because you feel like, you just don't have the energy. Folks, do you understand that the mental side of who you are is the one area, I don't care whatever happens to you physically, the mental side of you can always be improved. Always. You can always grow mentally, right? It's your choice if you want to do that. So where are you at in that scale? All right, good. Got it? All right, so let's go to number 3. Where are you at emotionally? And when I mean emotionally, what I mean is, how in control are you in your emotions? Look, we're in a very busy time of year. And most of us Americans, right, because I can't speak for other countries, but most of us Americans, we get all wrapped up and we wait till the last minute and we procrastinate with our gifts. And then we get all in a hurry to get somewhere and somebody cuts us off and our emotions explode and we start using hand gestures, right? And the fact of the matter is, okay, well, that's probably not being in the best control of your emotions, right? And emotional intelligence is extraordinarily important, right? Because the more you can control your emotions, right, the better able you are to emotionally relate to others. And by the way, that's intention, right? So you need to be intentional about how you deal with your emotions. I've heard some people say, well, you just got to let it all out. Well, that's actually not true. Psychologists have told us for years now that, holding it in actually is better for you than trying to get it out. The angrier you spew, the angrier you get. That's actually the truth. There is none, there is no, if I let my anger out, then I'm a happier person. Actually, it doesn't work that way. The more angry things you say, the angrier you get. So controlling that emotion is so critical and imperative. So you got that number? Okay, so you got 3 numbers, right? Your physical, your mental, emotional. Now, how about spiritually? Where are you at? And you go, well, what do you mean spiritually? Well, I mean, spiritually, what I mean is, what do you believe about other things that you can't explain in science or life, right? Some people connect with nature. Some people believe in karma. Some people believe in God, right? I mean, and some people believe in themselves. They believe that they are their own God, right? What do you believe in that you can't necessarily explain, but you know that there are things out there that are outside of you, right? Because you know that you can't explain everything in science. It's not possible, right? And on a scale of 1 to 10, how are you doing in that spiritual area? You know, what gives you a sense of peace and a sense of joy? I'm not talking about happiness here. I'm talking about something that puts you in a state of peace where, regardless of what's going on in your circumstances, you still feel like you're centered. That's what I'm talking about spiritually. And if it happens to be God, how's that going for you on a scale of 1 to 10? All right, so you've got 4 numbers, right? You've got your physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. Think of them as a table, right? And those are the 4 legs of the table, right? If all the numbers are low, it's pretty hard to eat in a normal chair, isn't it? If the numbers are off, where the table's tilted, well, the plate's going to slide off the table, isn't it? So the goal here is to get an even table and get it to the appropriate level, and that's as close to a 10 as we can probably get. So check in with yourself. Check in, got your numbers. But today I'm going to tell you what we're going to do. We're going to help you. I think you're going to get, I'm pretty sure you're going to get an emotional boost. I guarantee you're going to get a mental boost. I think you're even going to get a little bit of a spiritual boost from this guest that I'm about to introduce to you. And you know what? Maybe even something physically, because you're probably going to do something about what you're going to do. His name is Bretton Putter, and Bretton is a leading expert on startup and high growth company culture. He's consulted many companies and leaders worldwide on how to leverage culture to prepare for and execute rapid scale. After 16 years as the managing partner of an international executive search firm, where he has basically served C-suite people, right? CFOs, CEOs, CTOs, vice presidents, directors for over 400 startups and high growth companies, Bretton realized the single best driver of the most successful hires was how well the company had defined and understood its culture. Brett is the founder and CEO of Culture Gene, which I think is brilliant, by the way. A company culture consultancy, writes a popular blog on culture-driven companies, is a sought-after speaker and contributor to Forbes, and his name is Bretton Putter, and you can find more about him at brettonputter.com. That's BRETTONPUTTER.com, and he is brought to us today by Inline Business and Brokers. So if you're looking to buy or sell a business, check out inlinebusinessandbrokers.com. That's inline, ENLIGN.com. And so now, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome author, speaker, CEO of Culture Gene, Bretton Putter. Bretton, welcome to the show.
Really, really great to be on the show. Thanks very much. I love what you're doing, and I was just thinking that your four pillars of the 4 legs of the table are quite similar to a number of pillars that I've come across in business, and I love the way that you describe you can't sit at the table if you don't do it properly.
Yeah, if the table's skewed, it's hard to eat the plate. If the table's too low, it's still hard to eat, right? And be healthy. So, you know, the healthiest place is if the table is level and it's at the right heights for us. So, Bretton, by the way, everybody, you need to know that Bretton is in Romania right now. How cool is this? But Bretton is from Great Britain, in England. And oh, by the way, I need to say this because I just recently found out that one of the most listened to, a city that listens to me in England is Merton. So people in Merton, thank you so much for downloading the show. I am so
Awesome.
I am so grateful for you. People, you listen to the show, and there's about, I think there's about 5 or 6 cities that regularly download my show, and I am so grateful to you. So people in Merton, I've never been there, but I'm telling you, you've just made my bucket list. I want to go to Merton, and I want to meet you people, and maybe we could go somewhere and maybe get together, have a drink, and enjoy that conversation. Yeah, so Bretton, you need to know that I have listeners from GB and in England, and Merton is my #1 listened to city in England.
That's really, really great. I'm not surprised because you are hitting the nail on the head with a lot of what you have to say. So that doesn't surprise me at all.
So one of the things that I don't think we understand very well, I think some companies do, but I work as a consultant like you do with many companies, and one of the things I do run into is this idea of company culture. What's the culture of that company? And you wrote this book that I'm holding up for people who are watching on Facebook Live, Culture Decks Decoded, by the way, which you can get on Amazon. And by the way, it's brilliantly priced, under $20. And so I think this is a great Christmas gift if you're thinking of a last-minute gift and you've got somebody who's a CEO or something like that. Please purchase this book. And I know when you're looking at this book, it's a large book, and I saw it too, and I was a little taken aback. But then I realized he had literally taken SlideShare decks, and he had literally put them in the book, and he needed to make the book bigger in order for you to read the SlideShare decks. And just brilliantly done. So company culture, what is that, Bretton?
Well, Jay, the way I look at company culture is very simple. It's the way we do things around here. So it's something that develops and evolves over time. Let's say you start a business and there's 2 or 3 co-founders. You hire a bunch of people and you're all sitting around the same table. You've got a certain culture. Then you grow to the business and the business grows to 20 or 25. The culture changes because the business is growing. The way you work, the way we're working around here changes, and so on. So culture essentially is the way we work around here. It comes from the founders, it comes from the initial team, and then it evolves and grows based on how the team learn to make a success and to achieve success, and based on the people that you bring into the company over time.
So one of the things that when I read this book, and I love the book, but you will too, people. I'm just telling you, you'll love this book. One of the things when I read this book that really got me thinking, I can't remember which company it was right now, but one of the companies defined culture, or not defined it, but said about culture in the company. You have one, you just may not know it. But everybody's got a culture. Whether you set out to specifically define it or not, you have created a culture. True?
Absolutely true. The culture forms when 2 people start even talking about the idea. The key aspect about culture is it's either a potential liability if you don't define it, if you don't start to understand it, or it's an asset. So the companies that have defined their culture and actually gone to the work of writing a great culture deck are the ones who really understand this is an asset that we can leverage in our organization. And Jay, I'm sure you saw on the first couple of pages of my book, there's a quote, and essentially it's the fact that company culture is the one sustainable competitive advantage that a CEO has complete control over.
Right. Yes.
And that really is the essence of culture, because everything else, your competition, can impact you negatively. But with your own culture, that's under your control as the CEO.
You know what? Yes, and I wanted to say something about that piece too, is because I'm a firm believer in culture sets the tone for the company, and the clearer you define that culture, and I pulled this from your book, I think too, the clearer that you are defining that culture, it sets everything else down the line from that. Whether it's how you hire, what your mission is, right? I mean, it's the tone setter.
Completely true. It's the way I look at culture is it's what's inside all of us. If we're in a company together, it's the way we breathe, which sets the tone for how we run, how we walk, how we talk. If we breathe really quickly from our chest, then we're talking very quickly and versus if you breathe from the bottom of your stomach, you've got more tone, you've got more, and that's the way I look at culture, because culture as really the fundamentals of values, mission, and vision. And if you look at those values, mission, and vision, and then roll that out across the company by defining it, then you have control and you have leverage over your culture.
And here's what I found interesting when you were writing the introduction of the book. You said that there's 3 types of probably CEOs or people owners when it comes to culture that you've run across. The first one, and just to remind you, the first one who doesn't want to waste their time, basically. The second one, it finds it important, doesn't know how to get it started, and then the third person is the one who knows that they're doing something about it. Did I get that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. And why would somebody, help me understand this, because you've studied this so thoroughly. Why would somebody believe that culture is not worth investing their time in?
I know it sounds surprising because we think a lot, you and I both think a lot about company culture, but there are people who don't, first of all, they don't have the time because they're too busy. And secondly, they don't know how to access it. So culture is this intangible, subconscious, invisible, amorphous mass of stuff. And it seems to just happen. So let's just carry on with what we're doing. And those people don't have the mental wherewithal and capacity to go and think, okay, I really need to understand this thing because it's such a great asset to my business. They just think I have I've met some CEOs who say, it's who I am. So, and I don't care. I'm just going to drive the business. I'm just going to be myself.
Right.
And to be honest, they're forming a culture. And if they hire people subconsciously who fit into that culture, then, there are a number of, there are a bunch of companies that succeed without going through this process, but they aren't of defining, but they aren't the companies that really extract the most opportunity and value from their business model.
We're talking with Bretton Putter. Sorry, I just had Ben Brown, and I've got Bretton Putter here now. So Bretton Putter and his book, Culture Decks, holding it up right here so everybody could see it. Culture Decks Decoded, transform your culture into a visible, conscious, and tangible asset. Bretton has written this book brilliantly. It's beautifully well done. It's going to be an invaluable tool to you. I'm just telling you that this book is going to be great for your company. I don't care if your company's been around forever. If you're starting a new company, this book is perfect. It is on Amazon. It is priced less than $20. I'm telling you, buy one for your management team, buy one for your C-suite team. Get them to start looking at all these other cultures. I mean, he's talking about cultures like the culture with Netflix, LinkedIn, Nanigans, Nordstrom. For some of those, these are some names that maybe you heard of. HubSpot, right? Isn't it HubSpot? You have in there too?
Yeah, HubSpot, Hootsuite.
Yeah.
Patreon, Valve.
Right.
I've done a deep dive into a whole lot of these.
Yeah, Asana, eShares. So he's done a lot of research of what they do, and he makes a point of saying in this book, and I hate stealing your thunder, but it's just such a great point. You don't have, if you buy the book, you don't have to recreate the wheel. I mean, it's just if you buy the book, you can get all the ideas right from his book to create your culture because it's so beautiful. Well, Bretton Putter today is brought to us by Enline Business Brokers and Advisors. Are you a business owner? At some point, you're going to need the services of an experienced business broker. So selling your business is a huge, monumental decision. Make sure you build your deal team, starting with the experts at Enline Business Brokers and Advisors. You can learn more online at enline.com. That's www.enlign.com, and they are sponsoring Bretton Putter and his book, Culture Decks Decoded. So, Bretton, you did clearly a lot of research in regard to some of the companies we talked about, LinkedIn, HubSpot, Hootsuite, Nordstrom, and looked at their slideshare decks of their culture. Is there one, Netflix too, by the way, is there one company that you went, man, this is a wow. They really wowed me. Is there one or maybe two? Maybe there's two or three.
Yeah, there are a couple. I like Netflix because they are the original, they're the granddaddy of this. Reed Hastings posted his document online in 2009, and since then he's got 18 million views on SlideShare. And it's very comprehensive. It's brilliantly written. I also like Patreon. They've done a great job of really being specific about how they work and their mission, how they help creators create. And HubSpot, who you mentioned earlier, they've got a very nice mix of humility, humor, and deliberate means of communicating. So a good example is when HubSpot went public, they had to, because they were going public, you can only share a certain amount of information with a certain number of people who are officially designated to receive that information, which costs money. And so HubSpot said, no, hold on. We share everything with everybody in our company. And the lawyer said, no, you can't do that. He said, no, we have to. How do we do it? And he said, well, it's going to cost you money, but you've got to designate everybody in your company. So they said, we don't care, we'll do it. So they invested millions of dollars in designating every single employee as able to receive all the information about the company. And that it's such a powerful message about transparency and such a powerful message about how the company works. So I love HubSpot, Patreon, Netflix, and the last one that I would sort of flag up is Valve, the gaming company.
Yeah.
They got such a great personality, such great humor. Those are the four that really stand out for me.
So I want to, first of all, this whole culture thing, right? This company culture, which I know that we do not spend nearly enough time really talking about. And I think here in the States, especially, that we can be a little, I don't know what the word is, but we can sometimes focus on the P&L portion so much that we don't really understand that by defining our culture, we actually affect our bottom line. And you talk about that a little bit. So discuss that a little further, how defining your culture affects your bottom line.
Yeah, so a really good example of this is a business called Bridgewater Associates, and they don't have a culture deck that I'm aware of or that's been shared. But Bridgewater are the largest, most successful hedge fund in the world. And Ray Dalio is the founder and co-chairman and co-investment CIO. And Ray specifically states that the culture is the reason for the success of the business. They manage over $200 billion, really simply because their culture is designed to question everything. So it's a tough culture to work in. It's not a place that I would like to work in. Right. But if you're designed like that and you are open to being asked questions all the time about your personal weaknesses, the weaknesses in your thinking process, and how you could get better, it's all about the culture. Then you can go and work at Bridgewater. But it's a really clear example of the success-driven, culture-driven success. And actually, even in companies that don't have clearly defined cultures, their culture is still driving their success or failure.
Sure. I found Netflix to be very similar. Netflix, when you were talking about Netflix, you pointed out in their culture slides from the very get-go. I think the first slide basically is, we are a team, we are not a family. You're going to get fired. I mean, literally, right? It was like either we are a professional team. We will cut you in a heartbeat if you are unable to meet within the culture that we have an expectation for.
That's exactly right. So they define their culture as a combination of freedom and responsibility, which is the yin and the yang, the freedom to do what you need to do to succeed, but the responsibility to succeed. And the outcome of that is excellence. And the way they look at it is their company is as a pro sports team. And if you think of any pro sports team, any NFL team, any of those pro sports team, if you do not stay at the top of your game, they're going to let you go in that sports team. And Netflix are exactly the same. They expect excellence. They have a very interesting culture initiative that they run for their management team. So if you're a manager, you're asked a question every so often when you do a personal review, and that question is, if this person were to go and leave to join a similar company with a similar position, how hard would you fight to keep them? And if the answer is, I would fight tooth and nail to keep them, if that's not your answer, if you go, well, I'm not sure I'd fight to keep him, then that person's let go immediately.
Wow. So
it's called the keeper's test, literally within the company. It's called the keeper's test.
So we have some managers currently listening to the show. I could see them on the Facebook live feed, and maybe this is a good question you need to answer for yourself, managers. You know, if somebody came up to you and said, ask that question, you know, if this person were to go somewhere else, how hard would you fight for them? Maybe you got your answer, right? Because I mean, there was one slide that I agree with this philosophy, fire fast, hire slow. And I can't remember, was it Asana? I can't remember who it was. I think it was Asana. And they were fire fast, hire slow. And I happen to agree with that philosophy, because the fact of the matter is there's nothing more draining on your company than one person that is not doing what they're supposed to do. And there's no reason to hire somebody right away to replace that, because the truth of the matter is you need to find the right person. Otherwise, you're going to probably be stuck with the same one. I found that whole thing with Netflix to be, it was both frightening, and at the same time it was, okay, but if you're the right person, it's a great fit for you. It could be a great fit. Isn't that the point of the culture in general?
That's exactly the point. And that's the point of a good culture deck. A good culture deck is either frightening or liberating. And it's either magnetic, attractive, or magnetic repulsive. And that's what a good culture deck is. If you think you're going to go and join Netflix or Asana or HubSpot, and you read that deck and you go, oh, no, hold on a minute, I don't like this. This makes me feel uncomfortable. Then you're going to self-select out. I'm out of this, you know, no interest at all. And that's one of the main powerful tools, effects of these tools, because people will read the deck and go, yeah, that's exactly the right thing for me. And that could be liberating. You know, they could have worked in a place where they were micromanaged, where they had no freedom, they had no responsibility. And all of a sudden, a company like Netflix says, look, go and do what you need to do to make this work. And that's a completely, you know, it's an opportunity to grow and develop and learn about yourself and who you are.
Yeah, and I get it. Right. And I think some people would read some of these culture decks and go, oh, this company is miserable, because then, you know, you look at LinkedIn, right, as a company, and you see their culture deck, and you want to talk about a happy, friendly, you know, who doesn't want to work at LinkedIn?
Exactly.
I mean, it's kind of like, come on, if you could be creative and forward thinking, and you want to, you know, and you want to be part of something bigger than you are, and you want to watch us grow, we are for you. Come on. We want energetic, high energy. I mean, that's what I got from the when I was reading the slides. I was like going, it's high energy, it's energy, creativity. Let's have some fun together. Let's be a team, and let's be even more than a team. Let's be somebody. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's attractive. And then somebody will look at Netflix and go, whew, that's pretty rough. I don't know if I can handle that. But that's the point, isn't it, of culture?
That's exactly the point. And that's the point of the culture deck. A great culture deck describes that. You know, I'm sure you recall from looking at the valves, they weren't really slides, but more from their manifesto. If you go and join Valve, they don't tell you who you're working for. They don't tell you where you're working. They just tell you go and find your way.
Right.
So, so day one, you walk in and you're expecting, no, they don't onboard you. They don't tell you anything. Just go and work things out for yourself.
I love it. I'm sorry, I'm laughing. It's beautiful.
Exactly. And if you're the kind of person who needs structure and process and you need your hand held, hell no, you're not going to go work at Valve.
No, but you know what? I think about that because some people want some structure, right? But this is a company that goes, no, because the people that are going to survive here are the ones that take initiative on their own. That's the culture they took, because what we're looking for is they don't come right out and say it, but it is the person who takes initiative, finds their place, and then runs, and is willing to run hard. And I was like, and I think that's the beautiful thing about the cultures and the cultures of these different companies. And the more I kept reading through every one of these companies that you so brilliantly put together here in your book, the book is entitled Culture Decks Decoded, Transform Your Culture into a Visible, Conscious, and Tangible Asset, available on Amazon. We're talking with Bretton Putter. The beautiful thing that I saw as I was reading through all these cultures is I was like going, man, you know what? Company cultures are like countries. They're all unique, aren't they? There's something unique about the language. There's something unique about the unwritten rules, the norms, and the expectations when you start looking at these companies. And the beauty of understanding and being clear about your culture, and we touched on this earlier, but is that everything, I just want to go through this. Can I do this for you so that people kind of, if you start with a clear culture, let me tell you what falls out of this: your mission, your vision, your history, your values, the way we work around here, onboarding, diversity, inclusion, failure, talent, transparency, feedback, employee benefits, making a difference, and then bonuses, other things, right? All starts with culture. None of that happens without a culture. None of it. And it never dawned on me that all these things fall out once you have clearly defined your culture. How did we miss that?
Well, this is the great thing about it. There are companies that have some of these things, but they haven't thought about it, and they haven't looked at how they all come together in this unique way. And the question that managers and CEOs need to really ask themselves fundamentally is, if my competition have a culture deck and I don't have a culture deck, what does that say about my company? What is how are people, partners, investors, acquirers of my company, what are they thinking? If it's a like for like situation and one company has worked harder on their culture, the guys from Nline are going to tell you, I want to work with the company that's worked on their culture, because we then know how to fit their culture with the acquirer's culture, or their culture with the acquisition culture. So, the guys at Nline are certainly going to tell you, we want to know about your culture, because we then can work harder for you to find you the right fit. Right. And that's the comparison that you have to think about. Does my company have a culture? Yes. Is it defined? Is there a culture deck out there? No. My competition has one. Wow, they look better. They may not be better than us, but they look better than us. It's a very powerful tool.
It is powerful. We're talking with Bretton Putter, and he wrote this amazing book called Culture Decks Decoded. And we're talking with him about company culture, and he so brilliantly brings up our sponsor, who's sponsoring him in a new direction, Nline Business and Brokers Advisors. And they have helped literally thousands. I'm not making this up, folks. They have literally helped thousands of clients in the sale and purchase of businesses here in the U.S. When it's time to sell your business, I'm telling you, contact the professionals. It's Jeff Snell is the owner and CEO of Nline, and his folks are brilliant. I've watched him do what he does. He does it with complete and total confidentiality. He will keep things absolutely private. He keeps you as a business owner who is trying to shield yourself from selling your business. He keeps it all private and confidential, and he's brilliant at it. You can learn more about Nline and Nline Business Brokers by going to www.nline.com. That's www.enlign.com. Tell them that you heard about us on A New Direction and Bretton Putter and his book, Culture Decks Decoded, which he so gratefully mentioned Nline. So one of the mistakes, is this a mistake? Maybe it's not a mistake. Correct me. Is so many companies start with a mission statement. Should they start with a culture?
So I believe that companies should start with the values, because the values are the DNA, and the DNA of who we are, and then the DNA of the company that we're going to start. So a mission, if you have a mission that is just burning a hole through your heart, you've got to do it. That's fabulous. Not every company starts like that, but if you do have that, that's okay. But then move immediately to defining the values, because the mission is, okay, this is what we're doing to get, this is what we're doing to go somewhere. But the values are, this is who we are. This is what we stand for. This is what's so important to us. So from my perspective, culture is the way we do things around here. And that consists of the values, the mission, and the vision, really at a high level.
You know, it's really interesting that you say that, because I guess, you know, man, it's almost circular, isn't it? It's kind of like, if you don't have values, you can't have culture. And if you don't have culture, you don't have values. I mean, it's kind of, there's kind of this circular thing going on between mission, values, the way we do things around here, and culture. There's almost a circular, am I seeing it wrong?
No, you're quite right. If whether you have a mission or a vision, those feed into your culture, which feed back into the mission and the vision, and they're all driven by the values.
Got it.
So the reason why values are so critical to me is, if you and I were to join a business, and we started a business together, and I wanted to make as much money as possible. That was my focus.
Right. And
you wanted to save the world or improve the world. That was your focus. And we didn't really we kind of thought we're passionate about this technology we're building, but we haven't really thought about why we're doing it. At some stage down the line, you and I are going to fall out, because I just want to make a lot of money, and you want to improve the world, and as a byproduct make money, but not as much, different mindset. So those values and what drives us, what motivates us, and the behaviors that come through values that for me is the critical point. Being an ex-recruiter, I then look at how values go into the recruitment process, how values go into the decision-making processes in companies, how values go into the customer service process, et cetera, et cetera. So I look at values as actually literally like our human DNA. It forms us, and then it drives us.
I see it. Now, okay, so let's take your example, right? And thank you for making me sound so, glorious, like, I'm trying to save the world, and I appreciate that. Thank you. But could we merge those? Can we say, profitably saving the world? Could that be, I mean, is there a way that we could make those two merge, or is that not necessarily possible?
It certainly is possible. It just depends on really who we are, and are we, how flexible are we? So if you and I both agree that this technology can have a great impact, and making a good profit is the right way to build a business that's sustainable, and by changing the world, and resulting in changing the world, then I think that's fine and good. But it's really, really important to have a very clear understanding of what the end goal is.
Right.
Do you, if we're on, if you were a hippie, let's say,
Right.
and I was a banker, those two should not collide.
Got it.
Got it. So really, it's working it out, and often when companies are founded, the problems are slightly baked in because people don't spend enough time defining their culture.
Yeah, I have to be honest with you. This whole idea of the SlideShare culture decks was so new to me that the more I was reading them, and you took me through all these different steps that I was pointing out to the folks who are listening and watching. As I was going through the more I kept reading through these culture decks, the more I kept saying, man, why am I not putting this out there and being that transparent? And you make such a huge point about transparency, because I think there's something really powerful about that transparency. And right, there's something really powerful when you're willing to put your business, that type of transparency out there.
It's huge. And it's not only is it huge because it demonstrates you have nothing to hide, but transparency means that I'm open to criticism, I'm open to questioning, I'm open to being questioned on certain things. So if I say, this is the decision we've taken and this is why we've taken this decision, in an environment where everybody feels, we're autonomous, we're able to ask questions, people are going to say, well, you made that decision, take us through that thinking process. And people may then go and say, actually, that's not, we disagree with that. This is our feedback, which then builds a stronger business. Transparency results in feedback, which results in once again, the virtuous circle you were talking about, which feedback means I grow and I learn because I accept feedback and I'm prepared to work on it. And then I am transparent again with my next communication and so on. So you create that virtuous circle of communication, critical feedback, learning, adapting, integrating, and then communicating critical feedback. So transparency as a company allows your team to be able to go and say, hold on, we disagree with that process. It actually makes the business stronger. It makes the business more robust. And the companies that are the most transparent, you can see that they achieve great success. Then you have, on the other hand, Apple, which is the exact opposite of transparent, and they have their way of working, but that culture works for them. Right. But personally, I'm very transparent in my business. Right. We all know what the numbers are. We all know where the business is headed, and we all know what we're aiming to do. And I share the numbers on a monthly basis. When we bring somebody new on board, we share the board packs, we share the financial statements, because if people have all of this information and data, they can make better informed decisions.
Right. Yeah, and it's attractive, isn't it, to a potential employee? I mean, it makes recruitment easier, I guess is a better way of saying it.
Yeah, it shows the employee that there is first of all, if you're being transparent and the business is doing well, that's great. If you're being transparent and the business isn't doing that well because it's going through a difficult stage, that demonstrates to the employee this is a great place to work. So absolutely, it's very effective when you're working with employees and when you're working with potential employees as well.
We're talking with Bretton Putter and this book, Culture Decks Decoded, Transform Your Culture into a Visible, Conscious, and Tangible Asset. If you can't tell, Bretton is not from the U.S. He works in the U.S., by the way, but if you can't tell, he's actually in Romania, which I am so honored and privileged that he would take his time away from his family and be able to give me an hour of his time to talk about his book and do this for me, especially it's so close to the holidays. I got to tell you something that you did for me, and I want to share the story. So I'm consulting this company, and they didn't have a clear culture. And I was going through and I was thinking about the CEO and what he values and, you know, who he is. And it's not a very big company, but they do actually, you know, they do over 10 million a year and growing. They're continue growing and has grown every year. And so they're a newer company. And as I read your book, I realized that we don't really have a culture. And so I was thinking about the values and I was putting together this cultural statement. And I put together a culture statement for him and based on his values, and I sent it over to him. And I said, how do you feel about this? And he said, oh my gosh, this is us. And which, first of all, was very flattering to me because I felt like I nailed it, but I would not have done that had I not read your book. Well, he asked me to be on an interview for a major C-suite person to come on board and asked me to conduct the interview. And because I had written this cultural value statement out there that I wrote, because I had written it, it was so easy to do the interview because I knew exactly what I was looking for and could build my questions around what my culture was. It was genius, Bretton. It's total. What you created here. If people will wrap their minds around it, your hiring process is so much easier, right?
Yeah, I'm not. To be fair, I'm not going to say it's so much easier as a process, but the interview part of the process where you're evaluating, does this person fit with our values and who we are, is certainly so much easier, because what normally happens is an interviewer will try and work out their gut instinct. How does my gut feel about this? What do I feel about this person? And if you define your values as part of your culture definition, then you can, exactly as you did, you can interview against values. And if you interview against values, that is the most powerful tool you have in your armory to avoid hiring the wrong type of person. It is incredibly important. And I don't know, I think companies don't do this. And this is, I just don't, I kind of do understand, but I don't understand why. Because if you interview for values fit, then you're interviewing, does this person work the way we work? Do they think the way we think? Do they operate the way we operate? And it removes the need for gut instinct, or will back up gut instinct. It's really, really powerful. And Jay, you picking up that point in that book makes me incredibly happy, because it's the biggest bugbear I have as an ex-executive search consultant recruiter is people don't understand that this is such a powerful tool in their armory.
And let me go further with this, because I believe in the behavioral interview and looking at a person's history of behaviors, right? So you can ask questions to get at a person's history of behavior. One of the values in our cultural statement is we are fiercely competitive, right? So it is really easy to ask the question, tell me about a competition that you lost, or tell me about a competition that you won. I don't care what it is. I don't care if you played soccer and you were the goalie and you let the winning goal go by. I want to know, because I want to know what you felt. Because if you feel that hating to lose is more intense than loving to win, that's good for me, because I know about fiercely, as being a fierce competitor. Losing hurts me far more than winning thrills me. Losing drives me crazy. So, and I know that that's true of our CEO of the company I'm consulting, is that he is a fierce competitor in everything that he does. And he loves people who will compete. And so I was setting up my interview. As I was setting up my interview questions, I was getting at the behaviors of what are the questions that you can ask of a history of that competition. This is the beauty of what you gave me in this book.
Well, thank you, Jay. It's it's actually the beauty of that situation where you ask the question about their competitive nature is actually, if you ask a behavior-based question, the next natural question leads you deeper into the onion of the person. So
Right.
if they hate losing, and you ask the question of when last did you end up in the situation, and they explain it to you, you can ask, why did that happen? How did it feel?
Yes.
What did you do to change that?
Yes.
And you can go deeper and deeper and deeper and get a real sense. Does this person really mean it?
Right.
Or are they just trying to tell me what they think I want to hear?
Yeah, no, I eventually got to the question. So how did you recover from that?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
I mean, right.
Great question.
Right. Because how did you recover from that loss? Right. Because that was going to tell me, okay, how powerful was this loss? Right. How powerful was that for you? Because I got to tell you, when I lose, I dwell on it for days. I wanted to hear that. I wanted to hear, well, this was a tough one. I had to go to my workshop for 4 days and lock myself away from my wife and children. I was like, okay, I got it. Okay, that's enough. I think I got it. But the book, as you pulled it out together, really guided my entire interview process and my behavioral interviewing. And by the way, folks, I think you should really study behavioral interviewing, because even Bretton talks about, that some companies really structure their cultures in terms of behavior, which makes it so much easier for them to interview, because nobody could get in trouble for a history of behavior. Okay, I mean, you can't. You can ask those questions all day long without it hurting you. And again, Bretton Putter is the author. I know I probably say Bretton Brown. If I did, I apologize. It's Bretton Putter, Puttr. Again, I had 2 guests, close names, and I have to be very, very careful. Let's talk about the way we work around here, because that falls out of this whole culture value statement. What do we mean when you say the way we work around here? What are we talking about?
So what we're talking about is how culture forms when the team watch the founders, the CEO, and one another learn what works in their business. So let's say you and I start a new business, and we're trying new ideas. We try this type of marketing. We try that type of sales pitch. This one doesn't work. That one works. And then, so that's one way of doing it. And then we know that will work with that type of customer. Then we try something else, and then we learn another way of doing it. And then, the way we work around here, does that include transparency or not? Does that include honesty or not? So it's about the way we work around here is about understanding what works in the organization. How have we learned to assimilate this culture? So some companies are fully remote. There's no headquarters, there's no office. The way they work around here is through Skype, through different online technologies. They meet once or twice a year, but that's the way they work. Versus companies that everybody meets in the office. They all get together in the office every day, and they work in a certain way. They have a meeting cadence. They have a communication cadence. They have a fun, letting their hair down opportunity cadence. It's the different ways that companies work, and it's radically different in each company. Some companies are very similar. You're going to get banks work in a very similar way, but that's very different to a fully remote startup that has people around the world communicating once a day on Skype. So the way we work around here defines how we learn about our culture and how we learn about what succeeds with this business.
Yeah, when I was looking at how we work around here, I thought, okay, here they have this beautiful culture statement, and then I saw, okay, this is how we put the culture into action, right? That's kind of the way I saw it, was like, this is the reality of that. Our culture or value statement is, if you want to see that at work, this is the way we work around here. That was kind of my interpretation of it.
That's exactly right.
And I thought, it's really interesting because, we always say, typically, we typically regularly say, at least, put your put your actions where your words are. And I think that's the way when people are in this slideshare deck, and they say this is the way we work around here, is they're saying these are the actions to back up what we just said. And I thought, I thought some companies actually did a better job of that than others. I'll be completely honest. I've sometimes felt like Nordstrom was still living off of 1930 occasionally.
Yeah.
I mean, I really did. Like, and trust me, listen, Nordstrom is tremendously successful. So if people from Nordstrom, I'm not bashing you. Listen, I've been to the very first Nordstrom store in Spokane, Washington. So I'm not doing anything to bash you. It's just that it was very interesting to me comparing you to Netflix or HubSpot or something else that I just found that it was more archaic, if I could say that. And it's working for you, clearly. If it wasn't, you would be closing a ton of stores. But I did find that a little bit interesting that some companies were just better at this than others in terms of being more upfront with it. And
that's why.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Jay. That's why I did choose different companies, and I did choose different slides from the various slide decks, because not every company is going to be a Netflix. Not every company can be a Netflix or a Valve. You're going to get fairly traditional companies, but those companies, there's no reason why they shouldn't have a deck as well, because there are unique pieces of their culture that are relevant. And the one thing I really love about the Nordstrom culture, and I agree with you, it is a little bit, in comparison, it's not as edgy. But what I love about the Nordstrom culture is they reference to, we remember that we are on bended knee, right, helping a person put on a shoe.
Right.
We are at service to them.
Right.
And we are there to service the customer in the best way possible. And I just think that's amazing. It's a beautiful way of describing that culture, which has been around for as long as it has.
Well, I agree with you. Listen, I am a big fan of servant leadership, right? I'm a huge fan of it. I believe that if you want to lead, you serve. And there is something about always keeping in mind that their first salesman, and I'm old enough to remember when you went to get your shoes, the salesman was down on bended knee and they were fitting your shoes. They were putting the shoe on your foot. You never put your own shoe on your own foot. The salesman put the shoe on your foot. And if you think about it, how many stinky feet did they smell? I mean, right? I mean, and yet that was that, but they were willing to do that regardless of the smell of your feet, because they recognized that was how they served others. And I do find that still to be, I don't find that archaic at all. I find that to be beautiful.
Absolutely.
I find that to be beautiful. And I find it to be a recipe for tremendous success if you're looking for a model of success. I think you'll agree with this. I think you and I are on the same page with this. If you're starting a company, you're trying to figure out how can we be successful, start on bended knee.
Exactly. It's that at the end of the day, if you start on bended knee as the CEO, and the first person or the first level you bend down to are your people, and then they bend down to your customer in that reference point, then I think you that servant leadership, which I'm a great proponent, a fan of, is demonstrated in that way.
We're talking to Bretton Putter, 2 T's in both names, BRETTON, PUTTER, and you can find him at brettonputter.com. How easy is that? 2 T's in both names. He wrote this brilliant, amazing, outstanding, what you should buy for Christmas for yourself, for others, for your entire staff, for your entire team. It's called Culture Decks Decoded. It is transform your culture into a visible, conscious, and tangible asset. The book is brilliant. I'm telling you, it is a life. It changed. In the time I read this book, it has changed what I'm doing as a consultant. I don't care if you're a new company, if you're an old company. Why don't you take a second look at your culture? Are you having some issues in recruitment? Why don't you take a look at this book. And why don't you, because if you would do the things that you're seeing that he has researched and done for you, so you don't have to do it, you could probably do yourself a favor in recruitment, a huge favor in recruitment, just by putting your culture out there. And Bretton Putter is brought to us by Nline. Nline represents profitable, privately held companies with a gross annual income of revenue, a gross annual revenues in excess of over $1 million or more. Nline delivers the highest market value in the shortest amount of time with complete confidentiality. Learn more online at Nline. That's www.enlign.com. Again, it's www.enlign.com. Bretton, we've been on an hour. It feels like 15 minutes, to be honest with you. I always ask, first of all, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being on the show. I ask every guest, if they will, because the show is called A New Direction, if you could leave the listeners that are around the kitchen here listening into the show with a new direction for their business or whatever they're doing when it comes to business culture, what would you leave them with?
I would suggest to them that the future of work and the future with where we're heading as a society, as a business society, is about understanding why we're doing things, what we're doing, and making a difference with what we're doing. Doesn't matter what type of business you run, and understanding, defining, embedding, and reinforcing that culture, and just doing a great job for customers, for partners, for investors, for employees through a culture-driven mindset is it is the future. Whether it's in 2 years or 5 years, everybody's going to be thinking more and more about this. And Jay, it's been an absolute pleasure. I have really enjoyed this and would love to spend some time with you again in the future. I've got a second book coming out in 3 to 6 months, depending on how quickly I finish it. And it's all about culture and the interviews I've done with companies. So would love to catch up with you again sometime in the future.
Oh yeah, we're going to do this. I'm going to have you hold on. By the way, the new book that'll be coming out is called The Culture Gene. By the way, Leadership and Culture Development: Lessons from High Growth Companies is the next book coming out, and you're not going to want to miss that for sure. Culture Decks Decoded. I'm holding it up again for everybody to see. Pick it up right now. Bretton, hold on with me a little bit as I tune us out of the show. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been with us, and I want to thank you again for being with Bretton and I on A New Direction. He's been so gracious. He's at Romania with his family, and he was so gracious to give me this time, and I'm grateful for him. But I'm grateful for you because you listened to the show, and you've been so kind to just give us such great feedback and responses, and I am grateful for that. So folks, as I tell you all the time, be inspired, because when you're inspired, you can inspire someone else. And when we inspire others, they can inspire others, which in turn can make this world a tremendous place. So be inspired, ladies and gentlemen. I will talk to you soon. Ciao, everybody.
When you lost your confidence and the answers don't make sense, got to keep your hope alive. You got to know you can survive. This is your time to fly. A new direction, a brand new day. A new direction, things are gonna change. You can find the strength to go a different way, yeah. The time has come. Your dreams will take you places you have never been before. Find your passion, find your strength. Don't worry anymore. A new direction. A new direction.